aspirations of a wonderful family, a healthy family, and do everything that any and every other couple would do and plan for.
Absolutely.
You were in for a very rude shock.
Yes.
What happened when he was born? Did you realize at the time that Zayn was not okay?
So Zayn was born early. He was born at 35 weeks. My pregnancy was very well followed up with. My pregnancy was very... I'm going to dismantle your set. There we go. My pregnancy was very well managed or looked after because I'd lost my previous pregnancy quite late. So I'd been to fetal specialists and then I decided to come early. So there was nothing picked up before he was born. He came at 35 weeks, he was in the ICU for a few days and we'd gone home. And Zayn was doing okay. Around 3 months or so, I, as an occupational therapist, didn't feel he was strong enough. Took him to the ped a few times actually, and we'd had some feeding related issues, weight gain issues. We stopped breastfeeding,
not gaining weight.
Not gaining weight.
What are the exact signs that you picked up to indicate to you that something's amiss here?
So the biggest thing that I was worried about for Zayn was the physical development. I'd felt that he wasn't strong enough, and I was doing what I would do with kids that would come through to my practice, and I thought he just isn't strong enough. Taken him to my pediatrician a few times, was kind of overlooked. I took myself to a physiotherapist, started some more exercises, and again it was overlooked.
How come nothing was picked up at that point in time? And I know you and Mohammed and the family, the support groups have done... you have done so much research, you could actually become a specialist of this condition called Pompe disease.
So the signs and symptoms of Pompe's disease, especially the type that Zayn has. So Zayn has a type of Pompe's disease called classic infantile Pompe's disease. It's the most severe type. The onset or the start of the disease is early on in life, and you want to pick it up early. Zayn was picked up at 7.5 months. He only started treatment at 8 months. And by the time Zayn was diagnosed, he was already in severe heart failure.
Do you think that if he was diagnosed early on, maybe at birth or just a little after, that the outcome would have been slightly different? Absolutely. Or perhaps more positive?
Absolutely. So what Pompe's disease is, it's a buildup of glycogen. So when you eat sugar, you tend to break down the glycogen and store it in your body for energy. In your muscles, in your heart, and most of your body is made up of muscles, and in the rest of your body. And what happens is you excessively store the glycogen because he's missing the enzyme to break down that glycogen. So his heart excessively stored the glycogen, his respiratory muscles, his body muscles, and that was explaining the weakness that we were seeing. So we want to get intervention early. So what happened with Zayn, for example, is we only started treatment at 8 months. And because we started treatment at 8 months, we have an 8-month period where his muscles, his heart was severely damaged because of the later diagnosis. And because he had the late infusion so late, or started out so late, we now had to clear the build-up of glycogen that he had now produced over 8 months. And then we have to keep going to clear the build-up of glycogen. So what Zayn needs is he has infusions every 2 weeks. If he had infusions earlier, so say at 2 months or from birth, we wouldn't have the damage from the glycogen buildup.
How does that make you feel, you and Mohammed as parents? And I know it's Allah's will, everything happens for a reason. Absolutely. And there's a time and a place and a reason for everything happening. But I can't help wondering if there isn't disappointment and anger on your part for the doctors not having diagnosed him early enough.
That's it. So I think for me as a mum, I was told very often, stop being paranoid, just be a mum. Or stop being an OT, be a mum. And there was something wrong. And it wasn't just something little, there was something so big. And he actually got sick. It was in Ramadan, and he picked up a flu. It was after Ramadan, he picked up a flu, and we ended up in the hospital, and we'd gone back, and he wouldn't stop coughing. And then eventually we got to a point where we had to do a chest x-ray, and we saw the enlarged heart. And the thought often goes through my mind, I should have pushed harder. I should have gone to somebody else. I should have fought harder. But we can't do that. And if I look at how things fell into place, and you said there's a time and place for everything, and I am a firm believer in that. I think from knowing Kelly Duplessis from Rare Disease, I used to see her son for therapy, to how things fell into place so easily once he was diagnosed.
Just for the benefit of our viewers, I have talked with Kelly previously last year sometime about rare diseases. She has an amazing story, has she not? Because I'm sure in your deepest, darkest moments of despair, when Zayn is sick, and we're going to talk about all his hospitalization, you kind of almost feel to give up. You just reach such a dark place. What does Kelly's story do for you? Share that with our viewers.
So Kelly's story is personal in many ways for me, because I used to see the son for therapy.
That was quite a coincidence, isn't it?
Absolutely. And considering it's so rare, there are 5 other children with Pompe's disease. So you think it is very rare. So how is it that I happened to see her son? I remember the day our doctor walked in and he said, what's happening is, have you heard of Pompe's disease? And I said, yes. And he looked at me and he said, really? And I said, I see a boy for Pompe's disease. And he said, you need to walk out and go and call his mom. And from that day, Kelly has been incredible support.
Okay, let's stop there. We're going to go for an ad break. I see Zayn's very tired. His foy is outside and she's going to now take care of him whilst we continue this interview, inshallah. But just before he goes out, do you want to show that machine up, or can the camera just focus on that machine, and then Raeesa will talk to us after the ad break, inshallah. Okay, we need to take a little break to let Zayn go out and spend some time with his boy, whilst Mom, Anisha pardon, not Anisha, that's her mom, Raeesa Bulbulia Cajee, talks to us about Zayn's condition. It's a very rare condition. It's called Pompe-Disease, and I understand only 5 other children in the country have this disease, so lots more coming up after the ad break.
Is it troubling you?
We're talking rare diseases, and coincidentally tomorrow sees the World Pompe Disease Awareness Day, and that's exactly what we're talking about this morning with Raeesa Bulbulia Cajee. She has a 2-year-old son. His name is Zayn. He's one of 5 children only in South Africa suffering from this disease. Raeesa, back to you. And before we talk about the disease in more detail, we were still talking about Kelly Stradham and her son. What a coincidence that her son came to you for physio.
Yes, yeah. So he had seen me he'd come to our school where our support centre is, and I picked up therapy with him just for a few months. And there's certain moments that become quite memorable. And I remember I was doing my handover with my therapist because I was going to be on maternity leave, and we were walking down the passage, and I put my hand on my tummy and I looked at his picture on the wall. And his picture was on the wall because there's a child who could have medical related issues at school, so everyone needs to know what to do. And I remember looking at a colleague of mine, and I put my hand on my very pregnant belly, and I said, I think of this family and I can't imagine what they have to go through on a daily basis. And more than thinking of Jean, I actually thought of his mom, Kelly. So when our doctor told me to give him a call, or give her a call, I'd called her and she'd said, I said, they're thinking my son has Pompe's disease, and she'd said, no, are you sure? And I said, yes, this is the doctor who it is. And she'd said, okay, I'll see you the next day. And she drove up. She's now staying in Hartbeespoort Sport. She drove up the next day, and everything thereafter just fell into place. The rare disease community, in terms of Pompe's disease, is very small because there's such a few number of diagnosed patients in South Africa. So the community is very supportive of each other in terms of everything that happens. And we have had a few hiccups along the way in terms of Zayn having some long hospitalizations. And sometimes the road can be dark.
And I should imagine when he has these long hospital stays, your life is on hold.
Yes.
Your life and Mohammed's life as a family. But I do know you have an amazing support structure, your mom, your Kala, your in-laws.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for them, I guess you'd truly remain in that dark place.
Absolutely, absolutely. You underestimate the support that you need. And they say you need a village to raise a child.
Oh, true.
And for a child with special needs and special care, that is so important. And it's the support from your family and that gives you the sense of normality in your life, because it can become very consuming, especially when it's times that are more challenging, more difficult.
Now, you spoke about, before the outbreak, we spoke about the frustration and the disappointment that doctors were not able to diagnose Zayn as early as possible. We understand now why they were not able to do it, because it is such a rare disease. And I guess you didn't have Pompe disease top of the mind to go to the right doctor at the time. What's your daily routine look like when Zayn is having a good day? And how many good days does he have in a week?
Okay, so our days are busy because Zayn's disease has affected a lot of his body. So our week includes 2 physiotherapy sessions, an occupational therapy session, a speech therapy session, a feeding therapy session, and then every month we also see a dietitian to help us with his weight gain. So weeks become really busy. Every second week we have infusions where he's got to go in to get the enzyme to replace the enzyme that he's missing to help break down the glycogen. So we have to plan our lives around his therapy and his therapy intervention. Other than that, we try to keep his life as normal as we can for a little 2-year-old boy, whether it's going to the park, going to the zoo, and exposing him to as much as we can, because his body may be challenged, but his mind is intact. So he still wants to do everything a 2-year-old wants to do. They want to play, they want to be exposed to new things, Zayn at the moment loves his cars and painting and drawing. So encouraging those kind of activities as best as we can within the limitations that we also have. Because in January this year, Zayn had a trachea put in, which is the little hole in his throat to support his breathing. And that on its own comes with a few limitations in terms of where we can take him to and how long he can be off the humidifier and those kind of challenges.
What about other children? I mean, I think of my grandkids who are attending birthday parties every week without fail, or they play dates and sleepovers, etc. Is that ruled out completely in Zayn's life?
So we've been advised to minimize the risk of infection. And unfortunately, kids carry a lot of germs.
Oh, of course.
So we do need to build Zayn's immunity, but at the same time, we do need to take precautions. So we won't take Zayn to places that have lots and lots of people, that are confined spaces where he's likely to pick up infections. Like I said, we have very supportive friends and family. So our friends and family go above and beyond to be inclusive. And that's important for us, because I find, and when you talk to other families who've got children with different needs or special needs, they can become very isolated. And our friends and family have made the effort to be, or consider us and be inclusive. Zayn has been to 2 birthday parties.
Oh, wow.
And he loves it, and he loves the social interaction that he has, seeing the other kids and engaging in those activities.
What about his milestones, Raeesa? I know you are an occupational therapist and you have a very keen eye for all of these things. How far behind is he in reaching his milestones, and also prognosis, future? What have you been told? What have you researched? What are you aware of?
In terms of prognosis, when Zayn was diagnosed when he was 7.5 months, things really didn't look good. He was in acute heart failure. The diagnosis was late, and if they're not diagnosed early, children with classic infantile disease often pass away by a year. Zayn was already 8 months. We hadn't had any infusions yet. Things looked really gloomy. Where we are now, Zayn's heart is back to normal.
Alhamdulillah.
So our doctors feel that was remarkable. We have faith, we have hope, and we do everything we can. You know, we got his first birthday, and that was incredibly emotional. We spent his second birthday in the ICU. That was even more difficult.
I'm sure.
So we don't look too far down the line. We really celebrate each day, each milestone as they come. And when I say each milestone, we look at the little things that for other people may be so incredibly small, but for us can be so big. I mentioned something small like Zayn goes for feeding therapy. We had an incident where he aspirated, he choked really badly. And because of that, we had to put in a feeding tube so that he's not at risk of choking. So he does eat orally and he does drink orally, but most of his nutrition is done through the feeding tube. And he tries so hard. This week he managed to eat almost a full meal independently without the feeding tube orally. And that was a big milestone for us.
Absolutely.
He's 2 years old, He's just getting into crawling at the moment, and that comes with a lot of hard work. It's practice every day, it's the physiotherapy, it's the occupational therapy that we have to do.
It's really exhausting, but it's the effort you're putting in.
That's it.
For the love of your child.
And rewarding.
Absolutely.
So rewarding.
Before the ad break, there was, for me, what looked like possibly an oxygen case.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So that is actually a portable ventilator.
Okay.
So what it is Zayn used to be an oxygen, just a low dose of oxygen to help support his breathing. He doesn't necessarily have breathing-related issues, so he can breathe independently. In November last year, we picked up a common cold, and his left lung collapsed. And then we tried everything, and nothing could get the lung back up. So we had to do the tracheostomy, and it's attached to that machine that gives him pressure to keep the lung open. So he still breathes independently. That machine doesn't provide oxygen, it uses normal room air.
Ah, okay.
So it just keeps his lung open. We're hoping that is temporary.
Inshallah.
And he's doing well.
Sure.
That for us was a big decision to make. We did not want to go down that route. And we did. And it's been the best thing that we have done. He is a different child with so much more energy since we had done that.
Let's talk about Kelly, the foundation she started up. I should imagine it fills a very big part in your life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And support groups, how important are they? Do you and Mohammed attend?
Yes. So Kelly started Rare Diseases South Africa because she felt the need for support for patients with rare diseases when her son was diagnosed. So rare diseases really fills a gap that is so severely needed, as well as creating so much awareness. Support becomes important. As I said, this is a big part of our lives, as many people whose children become a big part of their lives. But you do need the support. So Mohammed and I have started attending a support group. It's a support group for parents who have children with chronic illnesses, as well as parents who have lost children. We haven't been for many yet, we've just started. And that on its own has been very beneficial.
It's a big step, isn't it?
It is.
Because you're going to hear things you don't possibly want to hear.
That's it. And you always sit there and you say, okay, there are people who have it so much more difficult, but at the same time, there are people who have it so much easier. And it almost puts your life into perspective, because I think when things like this happen, you feel, oh my goodness, this has happened to me. But you realize that this has not just happened to you, it has happened to so many other people.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got 2 minutes to wrap up. A few important messages you want to give to our viewers, to other parents who have children with rare diseases, and the issue around the type of support from people outside of your immediate circle.
Okay, so to other parents who have children with rare diseases, never lose hope. Sometimes it is the darkest hour, and somehow things always fall into place. You know, my biggest challenge was to say, I'm somebody who likes to be in control. And I had to say, walking out of the ICU every day, oh Allah, I leave my child in your hands. And I think when you do that, you take the stress away, and you feel that everything that happens for a reason. And I just never lose hope. Never ever lose hope and never lose faith, as difficult as it can be.
Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That's it.
And for people outside of the circle, what do you want them to know about these type of situations all around the world?
I want people to become aware and inclusive of children and adults who have differences. And I don't even want to say disabilities or difficulties, I want to say differences, because everybody fights different battles, and these kids fight big battles.
These tiny little human beings.
And they don't need to fight battles that society creates.
Oh, absolutely.
So people need to be more aware of that. Ask questions, be inclusive.
Thank you so very much for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely.
You've spoken from the heart, you've touched me, no doubt you've touched millions of people out there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your du'as from your lips to Allah's ears, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you. The lovely Raeesa Cajee sharing her story of her son Zayn, who is 2 years old. He suffers from a rare disease called Pompe-Disease. Please remember Zayn and all the sick children all around the world in your du'as, inshallah.